Yo, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's edition of the Orange Bloods Modcast here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum, joined by the tried and true, the steady crew of Anwar Richardson, Jason Sukamel, Alex Dunlap, here to talk about the number one ranked or number two ranked, depending on what poll you look at, Texas Longhorns. Fellas, what a weekend of college football. It's kind of good to get us all together in the same video just because we've hit the bye week. This season is going even better, I think, than I would have guessed going back into August and thinking about the conversations that we're having. Anwar, I'll just start with you. It feels like we're in the middle of watching something pretty special. I don't know how this thing's going to end, but it feels like a different Texas football season than I can remember being in the middle of. And that includes last season when this team ends up winning the Big 12 championship and making the playoffs, and yet this season feels a little bit different in all the best ways.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like you see, a complete team. I mean, we kind of get paid to look at some of the critical aspects of it, and so there are certain things you look at and say, okay, they could be better in certain areas. But I think the point that Steve Sarkisian kind of has been hammering on his last two press conferences is the most important thing is that at the end of the day, they're 5-0. At the end of the day, they're not giving up a lot of touchdowns. And at the end of the day, they're winning the games and they're winning them handedly. Like they're not in any kind of real close contest. So, it gives you confidence, Catch. Even last season, you felt like Texas kind of got lucky in a couple of games, and you felt like you were playing with house money, like the Houston game. You felt like, whoa, got away with one of those, the K-State, the TCUs. You felt like, whew, got really fortunate here. And right now, you don't feel like they're being fortunate. You feel like they're actually the better team. You feel like they're one of the better teams in the country. And so, yeah, as we continue down this path, Catch, it's easy to see and imagine like this kind of success. Like, we kind of already assume and that this is a playoff team. It's just a matter of where they're going to be seated. And that says a lot.
It really does, Alex. I mean, I think Anwar is exactly right. Even a hiccup along the road or this team doesn't win an SEC championship or whatever little hurdles might exist, it does feel like Texas is money in the bank along with and Alabama. I don't even think you can say that about Georgia. There are Ohio State. There are a few teams that feel like it's just a matter of where in the playoff scope they land and not necessarily a matter of if. As you watch this team every week, the thing that stands out to you in a surprising way is what?
Just the difference in the difference in the personnel that Texas is able to utilize. It's just, the players are just better than we've seen. I do my best to try and provide context with this historically when I do my columns where it's like, this is what I was hoping I could get to point out one day, man. It's like, whenever I started doing my columns with the charting and all this, the deep dig and stuff, it was always the anticipation of like things getting back to maybe a year like the Vince Young year, like where you could point at and you could say, look, we've done all this work. We've been doing this dating back to 2013. We're showing you now, like these players are better. They're better. They're playing more efficiently. They're doing this stuff, right? They're getting a new level of player, and then they're developing that new level of player. And even over the course of the last 3 years, we've just seen gosh, it just what a difference guys like Colin Simmons and Trey Moore are over guys like, how long ago was like Ovi Agwofu here and stuff like that? Like doesn't that seem like it was decades ago? It wasn't that long ago.
Can't believe you even remembered his name.
Well, what are you talking about? He was an Orange Bloods athlete. He was one of our NIL guys. He was fantastic.
Yeah, it's just a completely different level of player what we're seeing across the board. And I know, and it's like Anwar said, it's like people are going to nitpick about, well, the defensive line is not as good. Well, of course, like you lost an Outland Trophy winner and a dude that's killing it in the NFL in his first, four games. It's not going to be as good, but I mean, they're fine. And then they're just the other players around them. Like, and then it's like, even on the fringes, you start to see dudes like, Colton Vosick start to pop up and stuff. You're like, whoa, dude, I got this stuff coming out of the woodworks. And it hadn't been like that previously. So when I look at the team, I just look at them And what I see with my eyes, even in a game versus Mississippi State, they won by 22 and they look sloppy on defense. It's crazy to me. So it's a vast difference in the talent of the personnel, and I think that goes only not to the recruiting, but also clearly just the development that's happening on campus.
Jason, your naked eye tells you what about this team?
Pretty much agree with everything everybody said, Ketch. This has been a better team than I expected it to be before the season. It's been fun. I agree with Anwar. It's kind of like it's not a matter of if this team's going to make the college football playoff. It's like now the question is, will they get a top 4 seed and get a first round bye? I mean, that's kind of what I'm thinking. But yeah, just been extremely impressive. I mean, 35-13 against Mississippi State last week, right? And we kind of picked that game to death on the post-game show. And we're like, okay, they still won by 22 points. And kind of as we said, hey, then Alabama, Georgia happens. And nobody cares about that Texas Mississippi State game. Nobody cares that Texas kind of played a sloppy game of football. But even playing a sloppy game of football against an SEC opponent, still won by more than 3 touchdowns. So just really impressed with this team. And it's got some holes. I mean, the run defense can be leaky at sometimes. We still don't know about the depth, of course, at the running game, but there aren't many weaknesses or true holes in this team. This is a championship caliber team with no really glaring weakness in any one area. So better team than I anticipated. I thought this would be a really good Texas team that would compete for a national championship. I think I had them at 10-2 before the season started. I don't know where 2 losses come from at this point. I would probably go 11-1 or 12-0 at this point if I was making the prediction for the rest of the season. But yeah, just a really, Alex said, I mean, talented team in terms of roster, player development. The coaches have obviously done a good job. So Sark and the crew have this thing cooking, and it's been a fun first 5 games.
Want to remind everybody that this video is brought to you by
Yeah,
the firm over Daly & Black, the award-winning storm damage law firm based out of Houston, run by, John Black is one of the founding partners, longtime Longhorn. He's got a daughter at Texas. He's in the Rec Sports Hall of Fame. He's a Longhorn through and through. Keep in mind that they are in charge of the NIL baseball revenue, the NIL fundraising that gained over $40,000 in our first run, hoping to raise over $100,000 for Texas baseball NIL over the course of the first 12 months of the initiative. If you've got storm damage, if you need help, they go after the bad guys. They are an award-winning law firm. Go check them out. But they are a tremendous partner with orangebloods.com. In a very short amount of time, they've done an amazing job of immersing themselves into the culture. And they're longtime Orange Blood subscribers. They're keep it in the family. If you need help, if you've got storm damage and you need someone to represent you, there's nobody better than Daly & Black. Guys, I've got 2 things I wanted to do on the show today, and from an initiative standpoint. One, I wanted us to talk about, I think coming out of the Mississippi State game, one of the conversation pieces that people have had is trying to identify, is there an Achilles heel on this team? Did it reveal itself against Mississippi State? For instance, is the Texas run game on offense an issue? Is the Texas run defense and the interior of that defensive line? There's this perception that Mississippi State controlled the game with its running game. I don't know if that happened, but certainly the first drive of the game was problematic. Almost half the quarter off the clock, taking all that time off. And the other thing I wanted to talk about was just players over the course of the next 6 or 7 games that Texas really needs to step up if it wants to get to the finish line of where this team is headed. But let's start with the idea that this team has an Achilles heel. If there is one, Anwar, is it either of the things that I mentioned, the run game on offense, the run game on defense? Is it something else, or is it nothing at all? And we're going into the bye week looking for reasons for why this team might fail, but maybe there's not a true legitimate cause for concern every week this team takes the field.
Well, my Achilles heel would probably be something I'd have to actually ask Alex. And I don't know if Alex, where you are from a charting standpoint, it seems to me the penalties on the offensive line, starting from the center going right, seems to be an issue. And again, Alex may have better numbers. He may tell me to my naked eye. I feel like it's a bingo game where if there's a false start, it's probably either going to be on Cam Williams, potentially. If there's some sort of penalty, pre-snap penalty, seems to be Jake Majors. Seems like to be always from center to right. Seems to be something that I noticed the most. I don't really see much on the left side as far as penalties are concerned. That to me, but Alex, I don't know if you finished charting stuff, if you have your numbers or not.
I don't have them for the last game, but I mean, I could tell you what it has been for the first 4. I mean, if it helps, like, I mean, you're exactly right. Kelvin Banks hadn't allowed any disruption all year, but he did have a false start penalty last week. So that was 1 on the left side, but it's just been 1. Cam Williams.
Connor doesn't have a penalty all season.
Well, I don't know if he got. I don't think he got.
I think he got one in the last game.
Did he? I don't remember that.
I got to go back.
I don't remember if he got one in the last game or not. I'll know by like 2 p.m. tomorrow when I finish. You know, I've only just started the offense, but
But going into Mississippi State, he had none.
Yeah, and then and Cam Williams had 5. Jake Majors had 2. I know he added on another one. DJ Campbell had 1, and I know he at least added on another one. So you're right; it's from the center to the right side for sure.
And what about Cole Hudson?
Cole Hudson, no penalties.
Well, that changed last week.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, but that's still the right side.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about you, Alex? As you watch this team, I mean, you watch so much of it in review that I would have to imagine you've got a better sense for where the weaknesses, however big or small they might be, exist. You know, one of OU's got an ex-lineman, Gabe Card. I think he's how you say his last name, where he made some notes on Twitter yesterday, and he said the weakness of this Texas team is number 0 on the defensive side of the ball, and that OU just needs to attack Anthony Hill.
I hope that staff is listening to him.
It's not really my perception of an area of weakness, but hey, I was a little curious that he said that. From your perspective, is that even in the ballpark of an area of concern?
No, that guy. It's really cockamamie to say he said that's the weak spot of your front 7. It's just, come on. I mean, how do I even respond to it? It's just like, it's so like, it's the worst take I've ever heard. I just don't even know. The only grace I can give the guy, and look, it's like, what he did was he started to get geeked up for Texas versus OU, and he wanted to get an early look, and he watched the Mississippi State game. And I've never seen him do that in my whole life. I've never seen him do that. I've never seen him where he doesn't bring his hips through tackles and he just goes and grabs. Like, it's just Ant Hill is going to be he's going to be pissed this week, I think, watching back that game. There was something that so that's what I think. I think what that guy said is crazy. And I think
is there a weakness from your perspective, though?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think against the run, I'm not. It's like with Broughton, for one, Vernon Broughton's been better than Alfred Collins this year. It's like I'm just ready to say it. Collins, I think, probably has a better chance to be a better NFL player just because of his body and his length and stuff. And maybe he'll continue to try and develop, and maybe one year it'll just finally hit for him. But Broughton has turned into a guy he's been more effective. Even with that being the case, you know, Collins does have the more flashy plays every now and then where he can really, really, really sometimes can stand up really well against the run. He's just so inconsistent from play to play to play. Whereas Vernon Broughton kind of stands up against the run in a kind of acceptable way, but it's very consistent, right? It's kind of like, I'm not sure that was great, but it was probably fine. And he does it over and over and over again. Whereas Collins, sometimes he stands right up. He gets washed away, right? Jermaine Lolle's having a lot of trouble really, really, really standing up against the run. A little bit harder to move Norton. Kind of hard to move January, man, to be honest. So I do think, and like Savea doesn't even play, Sidney Mitchell doesn't even play, and so obviously I'm talking a lot about the interior defensive line here, and I will say I don't see the unit as an Achilles heel as long as David Benda and Anthony Hill are getting their fits right. Right. And this last game, we didn't see we saw the missed tackles from Anthony Hill. We didn't see any missed tackles from David Benda, but what we saw is him getting out of position and getting his run fits wrong. And when you have the combination of the linebackers getting their run fits wrong and the defensive line just being who they are right now, you're gonna have sustained drives whenever teams really try to commit to the run against you, especially when they start facing teams with better offensive lines and more elusive running backs. It's like it can't, but it has to be a multi-pronged set of failures. It isn't just because of the defensive line. It's because of the defensive line and their relative shortcomings to what we would generally expect from a team at this level, and the missed tackles from Anthony Hill, and the poor run fits and the poor leverage from a guy like David Benda. It takes a lot of those things falling into place, whereas it's not just something you could point at from game to game that's always going to be in existence, if that makes any sense.
Jason, jump into the conversation. Everything that you've heard, is there an area for you that going into Oklahoma and Georgia specifically, you'll have a close eye on?
Again, I said it at the top. It's hard to find a true area of weakness. I mean, I agree with Anwar. The pre-snap penalties and sometimes post-snap on the offensive line. You know, I mentioned this after the game on Saturday. They've got to clean that up. You can get away with that against Mississippi State and Colorado State and these other teams Texas has played, but you do that against Georgia and you're looking at 1st and 15 or 1st and 20. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to keep those drives alive. So they got to get that cleaned up. And then, you know, the run defense, and Sark kind of said, hey, last week or yesterday, he said, hey, it wasn't as bad as people made it out to be. I mean, they all averaged whatever 3 yards a carry Mississippi State did. Well, that's true, but they also early on, they chewed up a lot of clock. I still think the run defense, if I have to pick one thing, that's still the one area I would be a little bit critical, a little bit leery of Texas. Alex mentioned David Benda. We've seen that in a few games this year where he's taken bad angles, bad run fits, gone to the wrong gap, and guys have popped big runs. So Mississippi State was able to just kind of grind it out at times against Texas. So, Oklahoma's going to try to do that. Georgia's going to try to do that. They see what Mississippi State did, and they say, hey, let's do that, and let's see if we can keep that Texas offense off the field, maybe wear that defense down. So but even that catch, I'm kind of just grasping at something. I'm not that worried about the run defense, but if I had to pick something, that would probably be it.
I got to be honest, I'm a little surprised that I'm the only one that seems to have circled the Texas run game. Now, it's interesting.
Yeah, you know what? I'm in agreement. I probably should have. That was the other thing on my mind. I'm still waiting for Jaden Blue to kind of get into his groove. Sorry.
Well, it's funny because if you just look at the team numbers, Texas is one of the better rushing teams in the country. They're accumulating yards. As a matter of fact, I'm on the NCAA. Let me just double check this because I don't want to be wrong. But Texas, I guess they're not as high as I thought they were. They're 32nd in the country. Oh, this is red. It's great YouTubing when you're trying to talk and you just click on the run thing.
They're currently ranked 8th in the SEC as far as rushing offense is concerned, averaging 191 yards per game. Tennessee is number 1 at 290. So they're kind of middle of the pack as far as the SEC is concerned.
Yeah, they're 42nd nationally. And look, 191 yards a game, still that's just shy of 200 yards. It's not terrible, but they're getting a lot. They've gotten some Arch Manning rushing yards. They always seem to have a 50 or 60-yard chunk that will come from a random wide receiver, whether it's Ryan Wingo or whether this past week Isaiah Bond leaps into it. I'm a little concerned by the fact that Jaden Blue hasn't – I'm less concerned about the fumbles and what happened a week ago that put his butt on the bench as I am that we're 5 games into the season. He's only averaging 4.7 yards per carry. That's not good enough. Jarrett Gibson's not much better. He's at 4.9 yards per carry. That's really not good enough. And Trey Wisner is the leader of all healthy, and that's the key word, healthy, scholarship running backs. He leads the team with 5 yards per carry. It's not a good thing that Arch Manning leads this team in yards per carry at 6.3. So I feel like as good as this offensive line is, as good as the passing game is that complements the running game, something's kept this run game from completely getting unleashed. And I'm not look, Blues battled injuries. All these guys have been a little bit banged up, but you know, going into 2 really big games, starting with Oklahoma and going into Georgia, I'm not really sure, Anwar, what to expect with the running game. I know, though, that on Saturday against Mississippi State, they didn't get the ball till the middle of the first quarter. But I know in the first quarter, I thought to myself, holy crap, Jaden Blue's not going to get anywhere close to the rushing number on Prize Picks that I said he would go more on. It was obvious that Mississippi State and Texas was throwing the ball more than anything else, but just never at no point did it ever feel like the running game was getting unleashed. And that's a Mississippi State run defense that's among the worst in the SEC. So I don't know. I'm not yelling fire in a crowded theater. We're not there, but I have to admit, I don't know what to think as we're near the midway point of the season.
It's interesting, Catch. I don't know what to think either, because if I just look through the numbers, this will shock you a little bit. Do you know that Georgia's rush defense is actually ranked 14th in the SEC? Now, I'm going to put right above Florida and Mississippi State. Now, here's the weirdest of weirdest caveats I have to put into it. They're giving up 126 rushing yards per game. So just to show you how hard it is to run the ball in the SEC, Florida is at 15th, and they're at $188, and Mississippi's at 16th, and they're ranked 213. I'm sorry, it's 213 a game. I apologize. So and Oklahoma is giving up 105 a game. So just looking ahead, hell, Kentucky's only giving up. My Kentucky Wildcats, apparently. Kentucky's giving up an average of 78 yards per game. So, to your point,
the interior of that Kentucky defensive line is beastly, though. So, that is the strength of their team.
Yeah, I'm sure Alex loves those guys. I'm sure. So they will play. They will play some teams. Catch. If you look at the numbers, Kentucky's ranked 3rd. Arkansas is ranked 5th. Oklahoma is ranked 7th. They will have some teams where they will have to try. It's going to be tough to run the ball, and they will have to get some sort of momentum going.
It's a good thing the passing game's legit.
That helps. That helps.
The elephant in the room on this Texas team, they're receiving, combined with Arch and Quinn, the passing game from a pass efficiency standpoint is 10 points higher than the best season in Texas football history. The combined quarterback play that Texas is getting so far through 5 games is the best this school has ever seen. It is substantially better than what Colt McCoy did in his best season in 2008, which was weird. I had this in my 10 thoughts from the weekend. Weirdly, John Childs had a better pass efficiency number than Colt did that year. So whatever Colt's number was, which is the best individual number of all time, it actually was upgraded with the John Childs pass efficiency, which is maybe the strangest sentence that has ever come out of my mouth. This is what we've always talked about, that if you could – it was one of those things where it's like, man, if you could ever tell me that Texas has a 165 passer rating as a team, I think they're probably playing for an SEC championship. And it's like, well, if they're at 175, they're probably winning the SEC at a level like that. They're at 185 right now combined as a team. And if that can sustain itself over the course of the season, I don't know that this team's going to lose a game, Jason.
Yeah, again, I don't know where – the Georgia game is the one you can point to. I'm on record as saying, hey, and I made this proclamation a month ago, they're going to beat Texas A&M and Oklahoma by double digits. I mean, Kentucky suddenly looks like a formidable opponent, but I mean, Arkansas on the road is going to be tricky, but that's a game they'll be favored by a couple touchdowns. So the Georgia game is the only one you can look at as a, okay, it's kind of reasonable. I'm not saying they can't lose another game, of course, but that one's the only reasonable one. Like I'm looking, it's funny you're talking about pass efficiency catch. I'm looking at 185.3 for Texas as a team, actually third in the conference. So Alabama's 193 and Ole Miss is at 193 and some change. So some pretty good quarterback play in the SEC this year. But yeah, Texas at 185. You mentioned at 165. We're thinking, okay, that's probably good enough to get it done. Well, hell, they're 20 points higher than that, and that's with Arch Manning playing half the season. So, I mean, just incredible quarterback play. And Sark talked about it at length yesterday. You kind of forget that Arch has played about the same amount of time as Quinn has now, right? About 2.5 games for each of them. And just not really any drop off from one to the next. So I can't think of another program that's in this positive of a position that Texas is. Look what Oklahoma's dealing with, and Texas A&M, and all these schools with quarterback play, and Florida State. And I mean, just every time I turn on the television, I'm like, oh, that's bad quarterback play I'm watching. Georgia had bad quarterback play for a half, and then Carson Beck caught fire in the second half. But I don't think there's a quarterback room in the country that is even close to what Texas is putting out right now.
So let's end today's modcast with some discussion of 5 games in, 7 regular season games ago, not including a potential SEC championship game. Everybody pick a player or two that, in order for Texas to run the table, to be in a position to play in the SEC championship game, it would help a lot if the following player or two really stepped it up. Guys, the title of this video is like, the pressure is on. Who's the pressure on this Texas team to raise their level of play up on either side of the ball? I think the most obvious one for me is Jaden Blue, that if he can emerge consistently into the type of player that I think he's capable of being, I think it takes this Texas offense and as a byproduct, the Texas team as a whole to an even higher level of week in and week out. You know that you're getting some of the best running back play in the conference from if Blue can, because if it's not Blue, I'm not convinced that this coaching staff feels like they have that guy. It was kind of startling, Anwar, to see how reluctant Texas was to first put Trey Wisner in the game and then to put Jarrett Gibson in the game on Saturday. Gibson didn't get a carry until 51 minutes and 30 seconds of the game had been played. So even on a day when they were struggling, they really leaned in on Blue. He didn't repay that faith with stellar play. Ironically, his best run of the game is that first run of the third quarter. He busts off a 20-yard run and then fumbles at the tail end of it. He's my guy. Is there a name for you that when we just talk about, man, if this guy can be a little bit better or a lot better, it drastically improves what this team can become?
I'll let Alex go.
Well, yeah, I mean, so the obvious answer, I mean, the true answer is Alfred Collins. If he could become what he could possibly be, that's like a lightning bolt to the team, right? If that guy could be the best version of him that NFL scouts think that he could be, which is probably twice the player that he is right now, that's it. I don't think it's reasonable to expect that. I think the reasonable expectations would be that Trey Moore picks it up and that David Benda picks it up. Like Benda's got to get his run fits better, and Trey Moore's just got to. He just hasn't been as productive. I know Sark will defend him all day long, but if you just look at what the other guys have done as far as their pressures, their hits, their QB hurries, their sacks, stuff like that, Trey Moore has not been in the same universe. So I would say Trey Moore would be helpful, and so David Benda would be helpful. But as far and obviously I'm thinking about defense because I just got done doing defense. But certainly Alfred Collins, if he could be what his potential is, that would be like that's the nuts answer, right? So that's the way I see it.
Anwar, did that shape your?
No, it didn't. No, I just wanted to. I think for me, Catch, I'll just be Captain Obvious. It's Quinn for me. Like he's the guy that has to come back and I think hit that level or even more, over the next 7 games. And there's a variety of reasons, but look, I mean, Texas OU, like, he's got to come back from an injury again. He's got to be able to hit the ground running for these next 2 games. We saw, and Sark pointed it out on Monday when he talked about Georgia coming from behind. He just always felt that way because that's just the kind of team that they are. So that Georgia game, no matter what that score may or may not look like, it's going to be a dogfight there. And there's some games that are tougher, that are tough games, right? I mean, like, Kentucky will be tough, Arkansas on the road be tough. Like, those won't just be Texas just rolls in, they're Texas, and they're going to have close games. Like, at some point, they're going to have a 1-score game. And I think Quinn's got to be Quinn, and Texas needs that to happen. So for me, if Quinn's Quinn, that's fine. If he's not, and God forbid anything else happens to him, then I think, then becomes a little bit more of a challenging scenario.
Jason, last thought on this particular subject material. It's funny because I'm looking at Alex's his tiers, and I'm looking at guys that are not making plays in double digits. So when he does his snaps for production, the Alfred Collins, Trey Moore, those 2 guys together stand out in that they're not in single digits in terms of snaps per production. But hearing Sarkisian talk yesterday about needing to force turnovers, that they're +2 in that category, and that's not where they want to be. Colin Simmons is forced to fumble. And who's the other guy that forced them? They've only forced 2 fumbles. Was it Broughton? It was a strip sack. So the only 2 forced fumbles they've had all season were both.
Wait, I thought they had another forced fumble. They had another one because
I don't think so. I think they've only, if I remember the stats, because Colin Simmons has 1, and that is a elite.
Oh, you're right. Yep.
So who do we point to say they've got to force more fumbles?
Was there not another? Or maybe was there a fumble recovery that somebody didn't force?
Well, that's what Simmons did. He forced a fumble that wasn't recovered by Texas, but it still counts as a forced fumble.
Oh no, but I'm all right. So I remember what happened. Jahdae Barron recovered a fumble, but it was not forced by a Texas player. So that's what it was. Okay, all right, that's fine.
So Jason? Who has to start forcing some fumbles?
Now, that'd be probably your linebackers, but I mean, I'm not saying those guys need to step up necessarily, but those are the guys that are probably going to force your fumbles, linebackers, maybe safeties. The obvious guys who need to step up are Jaden Blue, Alfred Collins. Okay, those are you guys have mentioned those. Those guys are obvious. I still think that right side of the offensive line needs to play better in terms of cleaning up their mistakes. I'll say I think Jonte Cook, there's going to be a time when Texas is going to need Jonte Cook, whether it be injuries, close game. They need him to make a play. He didn't make it last week. He dropped what should have been a touchdown pass. So I think you can put Jonte in that category as a guy who needs to step up and play better when his number is called. And there's going to be a game or games when his number is going to be called in key situations. It's going to happen. I think, Trey Moore is an obvious one, but I'm like, does he really need to step up? Because Colin Simmons is so good. Yeah, I don't know that it kind of takes the Trey Moore thing.
Like if he steps up, he gets more playing time. It takes calling off the field,
exactly. So I'm like, I don't know if he needs to step up or fade away a little bit. I don't mean to bash the guy, but the obvious answers though are Alfred Collins and Jaden Blue is number 1. But if I'm having to kind of dig a little deeper, I'd say the offensive line, particularly the right side, clean up those mistakes, play better. And I still think Jonte Cook. I mean, Sark said on Monday, yesterday, he said, we've been really fortunate to not have any injuries at receiver. And he mentioned some other positions. Well, there's going to be a game or games when, hate to put it out there in bad karma, but there's going to be a receiver or 2 that's going to be injured. And Jonte's going to have a bigger role. And Texas needs him to play better when he has that bigger role that I think inevitably is going to come at some point.
All right. It's funny. I was just sitting there thinking, as we were all just listening to everybody, can you imagine how many Trey Moore videos, panic videos, we'd be doing here on the channel if Colin Simmons didn't exist? Because Trey Moore I think everybody thought that Trey Moore would have the production that Colin Simmons is having. but that Simmons is having it just means that somebody is having it. So you don't have to necessarily freak out about the fact that Trey Moore, who was a preseason third-team All-SEC player, has 9 tackles, 0 tackles for loss, 0 sacks, 0 quarterback hits, 0 real plays of substance. Although when you watch him play, like every game, he's got a little bit of Alfred Collins in him, Alex, where there will be a couple of plays where you go, holy crap, he just did that. And then it doesn't happen in abundance, though, and it's not necessarily leading to highlight plays.
Let the record show I was always the one that kept saying I need to see him do it on this level because I saw him do it at UTSA is not the SEC. So I always had a little bit.
Okay, Mr. Kentucky, you're on the record.
I'm just saying. I was not sold on. I was not totally sold on it.
You know what?
And Mr. Sorrell's in the chat, and he'll co-sign on that one.
As a guy who's the slow down guy, I was on the other end of that equation on where I was like, if we had our player draft, I was going to draft like Trey Moore really high. I thought he was going to have a.
Did you see? Do you remember Travis's preseason prediction?
I don't remember. I'm sure I did, but I don't remember what it was.
If I'm not mistaken, he predicted that Trey Moore was going to end up with 16 sacks.
He's got some catching up to do on that call.
In real time, I was like, Travis.
He's got to average two a game from here on out. We'll see what happens.
Well, look, Texas will play maybe 3 playoff games and an SEC championship, but yeah, there's some work to do before we hit the 16. Hey, I got to raise my hand. I think I had him at like 8.5. So. I'm not any closer at this point. Look, guys, we've really appreciated it. We're going to cut this one a little bit short. House Divided coming up in a little more than an hour. For myself, for Anwar Richardson and Jason Sukamel and Alex Dunlap, guys, hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe to the page, notifications, all those things. And feel free to comment. And remember, Daily and Black, any storm damage whatsoever, if you're in the Houston area and you need to take on some bad guys, Daily and Black have awards lined up out the wazoo because they win you money. They protect you. They're the good guys. For the entire Orange Bloods crew, we will